you, Brian. So tell us a little bit about your journey and what's your major, where you are, when you wrote the exam, when you started studying. So thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for having me on. So my name is Brian Custodio, and I'm actually in my Master's of Science in Project Management through BU. I have one class left to go to complete my master's. I'm currently a program performance manager for General Dynamics Mission Systems. I've been doing this for roughly 8-9 months now, but I've been with General Dynamics for 12 years. But my job is mainly a lot of earned value. So a lot of what's on this exam was relatively easy to me when it came to cost and schedule and scope. So I came in today to speak about taking the exam from home. I submitted my application to PMI back in December of 2019 with plans to take the exam near the end of March 2020. I was never audited once I submitted my application, and around 3 days later, I received an email stating I could schedule my exam. And I did so for the end of March. I studied and took a 3-day PMPPrep course through BU with Jim Hannon, and I also used Rita Mulcahy's PMP Exam Prep 9th edition. And I honestly never touched the PMBOK through that whole time. I read the Rita Mulcahy's PMP Exam Prep 3 times, covered to the end of the book, and I skimmed it for a 4th time. 2 days away from my scheduled Pearson VUE facility exam, it was canceled due to the pandemic, and at that time there was no option to take it from home. Luckily, around April 16th, PMI opened the option to take the exam from home, so I booked it for the end of May. Pearson VUE has a test, so before you jump into the exam about 24 hours prior, you should do a health check on your computer, whereas Pearson VUE has you hop on, they do a scan of your computer, make sure you have everything that you need to take the exam. You'll obviously need a photo ID, like a passport or a license to take the exam, and they require you to take pictures of the front, the back, and each side of your workstation. You are only allowed 1 monitor, you can't have dual, and you can't have anything on your desk, even scrap paper. So I know when you go to Pearson VUE at the facility, they allow you scrap paper so you can do network diagrams and such. They do not allow that on the online exam, but they do have a whiteboard. So you can draw things on the whiteboard and do your network diagrams or whatever you want to do a brain dump on before you start the exam. On exam day, you'll sign in Pearson VUE and sign in. You'll wait for the proctor to sign in and give you directions from that point forward. They don't allow you to have your phone nearby, and they are pretty strict when it comes to looking away from your screen, moving out of sight in any way, or even covering your mouth. They don't want you to cover your mouth because you could be dictating to someone else or asking someone else questions that they may not see or hear. So they don't allow you to even, one of my things during test taking is either to look up or cover my mouth. They told me not to do so 1 or 2 times during the exam. You cannot move, obviously you cannot move out of sight. And I've heard of people even passing the exam and once it says congratulations, they actually moved out of sight. And I've heard, and I don't know how true it is, but they failed because of it. So just wait till the end, ask them questions, when the congratulations comes up on the screen because you just passed. I wanted to take like a screenshot or, take a picture just to ensure that I knew I passed, and they wouldn't allow that. So I made sure to ask at least before doing so. During the exam, you are now allowed a 10-minute break, almost halfway through. So they give you your first part. They give you the option of the 10-minute break. I did not take the break because I knew roughly from taking practice exams, it would take me about a little over 2 hours to go through the exam. But once you do, if you do decide to take that 10-minute break, you have to return by the allotted 10-minute period. And if you don't, your exam will be terminated. And once you do take that 10-minute break and you opt for that, you cannot go back to the first part of the exam. So just keep that in mind that if you think you're going to take a 10-minute break, go research the stuff you just saw in questions and come back and go back to those questions. You're not allowed to do so. The current PMP exam change was scheduled to change after June 30th, 2020, but they now have pushed that due to COVID to December 31st, 2020. And the new PMP exam is scheduled to begin on January 2nd, 2021. And I think that's about it, unless any of you have any questions for me.
Wow. Just listening to you, my blood pressure has gone up.
I'm sorry. It actually wasn't that bad. You know, I thought it was going to be worse. I've taken many proctored exams before. So for me, it was, you know, going through BU, taking the proctored exams. I knew what to expect. They were a little more strict than even BU proctored exams. But I mean, you kind of anticipate that with how prestigious the PMP is. And I think they want to uphold that.
All right. I'll ask a question, then I'm going to request other people to ask questions. There is, this is just a comment first. I know you mentioned that you don't need to read the PMBOK guide because Rita Mulcahy is based on Rita Mulcahy, which is the book that my group here is going through as well. That's the recommended book. They do cover the PMBOK seriously. Did you go through the lexicon, terminology? How did you go about preparing for the buzzwords and terminology?
So luckily for me, you know, I've been working in or around project management for, I don't know, 12 or 15 years now. So a lot of the keywords I understood. There was just certain things, you know, aspects in project management that whatever company you work for may not touch upon. So like I didn't know a lot about quality. There were certain topics I didn't know a lot about. So I just really read those chapters more, like procurement as well. That was probably my hardest chapter. But the key, I honestly, Professor, I read the book 3 times. That's kind of how, you know, the first time I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pass this thing. I really have. I mean, I know quite a bit. I started I did about 10 questions to 20 questions at the end of every chapter, and I was doing okay. You know, I was scoring mid to high 60s most of the time, but there were certain chapters I even scored, you know, low 60s, and I was starting to worry if I would pass. And, you know, after the second or third time, I started noticing I was getting more confident, and it was actually starting to stick because some of this stuff is new, no matter how long you've been working in project management.
Also, what would be a correct answer at work is probably not the textbook answer, I mean, or the PMP correct answer.
Absolutely.
So you have to forget some of those. There were questions on ethics as well. Did you recognize those?
I did. You know, I think what makes this exam as difficult as it is it's never going to ask you, you know, what's the definition of a project, because that would be too easy. I would say about, I don't know, maybe 80% of the exam or almost all the exam was situational, right? So you really have to understand the material because you're not going to be able to just, I mean, I could always narrow it down to 2 or 3 choices, but all those 2 or 3 choices could be correct. You really have to know which one is the most correct for that situation.
Yeah. For example, I mean, what you're trying to say is, yes, it's good to know the glossary from PMBOK, understand the definition of a project pretty well, understand the definition of a program, but eventually you might not see a straightforward question saying, which of this is the definition of a project, you know, unique, so forth and so on. You'll probably see some situation where Mary is working on the following and she's managing benefits. She has several little things going on, you know, and then you know that this is not a project that she's working on because she's focused on benefits realization and she's doing multiple so-called projects. So it's very clear to you that she's working on a program. So that's probably what you're getting at. My next question is study plan. It's very important for students who are getting a PMP certification to prepare a plan that covers all the activities, whether it is, today I plan to skim PMBOK chapters 1 to 3 and read Rita Mulcahy's chapter 3, and then take sample questions. Did you find a study plan? Did you set aside some time daily from work, from on the weekends? How did you study?
Yeah, so the first time I went around, I tried to do 1 to 2 chapters a week. I did do it after work. I would schedule, in the beginning, it was only, an hour every day after work. I would do as much reading as I could or try to finish 1 chapter if possible. And, some of the chapters are pretty long, so that wasn't happening. And I wasn't in a rush at that point because I figured I had 3 or 4 months to take the exam. So I figured I had enough time. And then, I took the PMP prep course through BU, and I realized during that 3-day, especially the first day, I realized I probably didn't know as much as I thought I knew. So I kind of ramped up my studying from there, and it was almost 2 hours a night until I took the exam. What was really helpful, and I don't know if you are using it or anyone in here is using it, but the Rita's process chart game online, which is absolutely free to anyone. I played that game, I would do my hour of reading and I would jump in there and play that game for maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Brian, could you please write the name of you said Rita's process game sorry.
Yep, I just put the link in the chat. So if you click on that, it has, it's going to give you a whole bunch of activities and you drop them into either initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, or closing. And you go into a test mode in it and, it'll rate you on if you got them right or wrong. And then it'll also rate you on planning if they're in the correct order. Megan, your question, is there any part of the test I felt unprepared for? Yeah, so some of the issues, when I was studying, and this, as you study, you start to realize the chapters you're not very good at. There was a lot on my exam. There was a lot of quality, risk, and stakeholder management questions, and I wasn't as prepared for quality or risk. I don't do much with quality on the programs and projects I deal with because we have a quality department that does that, so I don't really dabble too much in there. And risk, we don't, in my company, do a great job of mitigating risk. We kind of just accept all risks. So, we do have a risk lean, but I wasn't super savvy when it came to risks. So I learned a lot from reading this and how we should be doing risks.
Hi, Brian. This is Amy. Just listening to you, my gray hair has multiplied and my blood pressure is going over the roof, like Prof. Cannibal said.
I'm so sorry.
I've not even registered for the test yet. I'm still trying to put my form together. But in terms of calculation, can you speak a little on that?
What do you mean? What calculation?
Cost calculation. Earned value calculation. Schedule, variance, and all of those things.
Yeah, sure. So I work in earned value. So, I know what earned is, which is, if you're dealing with a schedule, usually it's percent complete. That's how we measure earned. And then you have your baseline for either cost or schedule or scope. When it comes to cost, it's pretty simple. You put a cost in there for your baseline that you want to measure against. So let's say I have this task and I estimate it's going to take 100 hours. Well, if I do 120 hours, I have a 20-hour variance in there, a negative one, right? Because I ran over by 20. So it's just a measurement of, how you're measuring today versus what your plan was initially, your baseline. And it's the same thing with schedule. So, if you're, you plan to do this task in 40 days, but it took you 20, you did it in half the amount of time.
Yeah.
your SPI would probably be, a 2.
Very good. So just to follow up on the whole topic of calculation questions, the basic questions that you would find in Rita Mulcahy was good enough, right? You didn't see anything that stumped you, because I know you said you do earn value for a living, so you probably knew more stuff than the book covered.
I knew, unfortunately, during my exam, I was hoping to get more of those questions, but I think I only got 2. Because I really wanted those, because I was like, oh man, that's a home run. That's the one thing I know 100% on this whole exam.
Yeah. Right. So all the formulas that you memorized probably didn't help you. Cost variance, schedule variance, CPI, estimated completion. All right.
No.
TCPI, again, maybe not, because you only got 2 questions. So you probably didn't even see TCPI.
No, I didn't. And I think the one question I had was on CPI, and it was, a CPI question where, it says
EAC divided by, all right, just calculating the CPI, which
not
is
even calculating. It just told you what the CPI was, and you kind of have to, infer if it was good or bad, if you were under budget or over budget.
Yeah, exactly. Below 1 or above 1. Very good. And were the ethics questions confusing, or you don't know?
Some of them kind of always threw me off, even when I was practicing, like the paying off officials to get things done in different countries.
Yes.
I got that wrong quite often, actually. And I still don't know if I got it right on the exam.
True.
Towards the end of the exam, I did a lot of studying. I thought I prepped pretty good. And at the end, I was like, well, I'm done. Now I can't wait to hit the submit button and really find out if I passed or not.
Good. Oh no! Congratulations, you passed. So what I have been told is that you should. This is for the students who will take the exam in the future. Is that you should take a hard-nosed attitude when you see an ethics question. So try to go more on, try to be very hard-nosed on, yes, I know we will lose money on this, but I would much rather, lose $30,000 than do this thing unethically. I'm not going to give a bakshish or something like that. All right, so
one question, Professor. Just one question. My question is, it almost seems like if 2 individuals take the exam, they both could have different set of questions. I mean, does the exam apply some type of algorithm that determines, where you weak at, or is it just random?
So I think each one is actually weighted depending on how hard the question is. So I think when PMI determines the exam, they determine like almost like a weight on the question, right? And it is a random pool of questions you're going to get. So you could get quite a bit of hard ones, but they'll be weighted more heavily than the easier ones that you get. So I'm not, and I could be wrong, Professor. I mean, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that's the way the exam was. And there's 25 questions that are not even
graded.
They're not even, they're not graded. They're just for future exams.
Yep. So even if you get those right, you won't get credit for it. Yep. I'm not entirely clear. I haven't read anywhere that they use a scale. I'm not very sure. I know many exams do that, and based on your response, you would get different kind of questions. Maybe they don't want you to, start getting demoralized. So you might see if you're getting some difficult questions wrong, you might be streamlined into some easy questions, but get less points for it. All right. So, yes, you have to, by asking anyone what questions they saw is not going to help, because the database is having tens of thousands of questions, and no 2 people are going to get the same exam. I've seen some people who I've asked them and they've said, well, my exam appeared to be almost entirely based on lessons learned and the importance of, capturing experience from one project and leveraging it in future projects. And the other people will tell you, I never saw a question on lessons learned. So that's what it is. Aaliyah, okay, Aaliyah wants a recording of this. I always post the recording in the course, so you'll have a choice to see it. Okay, Brian, I just told you that I would take 20 minutes of your time. We're pretty close to 25. Did you form a study group or you studied by yourself?
So I had the, the PMPPrep course with Jim, but after that, we did a lot of post-its on boards and stuff like that during the 3 days. But after that, I studied by myself for the remainder.
So it was a solo exercise. Very good. All right, so we'll, since you have helped us out and we know you'll need PDUs, I'm going to give you an opportunity to earn 18 PDUs. So make sure you review the slides and the videos and credit 18 PDUs for towards your recertification. Thank you very much. If there are any more questions, we will tap into you, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you, Professor.